these are the 8 strategies that you need to grow a year's worth of food. Number 1, picking what you're going to grow. Now, this is quite easy. What do you eat? That's probably the thing you need to start off with the most. If you eat it, you'll probably like it if you grow it. So make a list of everything you like to eat, so you have an idea of what you want to grow. If you're just starting out, fast growing crops like radishes are a really good one to get that sort of dopamine hit. But think about what space you have available to you for growing, canning, etc. Because storing your own food takes up a lot of space. And yes, I have lost my gardening gloves. There's a number of ways of deciding how much you need to grow if you have enough space for it. Number 1, you can Google it. That's what I did. Number 2 is trial and error. This is also what I did. So over the few years that I've been growing, I've literally been deciding, okay, I need more of this, I need less of this, I need more than this. So over the last, 8 years, I've been growing a ton of stuff, and some of it I'm like, why did I grow so much? I never need this much. And sometimes I'm like, I run out quite early. So for example, onions, I'm getting a bit low on them, even though I grew 300 last year. So this year I'm going to go for 400. Next year, maybe 5, maybe 600. It's all about trial and error. This is something that's going to take a few years for you to get used to. Having potatoes and carrots are really easy to store, and they're one of the staple crops. So really investing in staple crops is a really good idea. But if you want to really impact that food budget, then go for things like aubergines and tomatoes, because they're pricier in the shops. And there's an absolute ton that we can start off now, like these onions, which we've sown 400 this year, which is 100 more than last year. So onions is a really good one to start off now, especially your larger ones. Chilies, peppers, cauliflower, aubergines, and then mixing in things that you want to try. I've never grown these beans before, Edam beans, but I really love them. So they're going to be something that I'm going to be trying this year to see how well it works. So it'll be quite exciting to give a little bit of room to something that really makes you want to go out into the garden, because there's a lot of times that we're growing the same thing again and again and again, and something that's new and exciting really does make us want to get out there and do stuff. This is my growing calendar. As you can see, I've put all of my seeds into months, which I know is not very popular with some people, but it means that I can come along and just grab what I need and put it in a tin and bring it down to the garage, and that's what I'm going to be sowing. Lots of people do it by variety or by species or whatever you want to do, that's fine, but this is for me the most simple way of doing it. The month before I need to sow them, I always go through them and see if I need to buy any more, because there's a lot of times where, to be honest, you put back seed packets and think, oh, I'll remember I don't have them. That's another one that I'm really excited about. I've never grown them before. Dazzy picked them for her little plot. I find with seed saving, the easiest thing to do is be organised. Anything becomes a chore, you're not going to do it. But deciding what to grow, make sure that you're thinking about your climate. There's no point of growing things like bananas in a country like this, because they're just not going to work, and I'm totally jealous for those of us who can grow these. But the best thing to do is look at the back of the packet, read that, look online, follow YouTubers. That's a really great time to subscribe. But it's also a great way of learning. I've learned so much offline. It literally should be called the University of YouTube. So find someone in your area that's growing and follow them. And if you're lucky enough to already have an allotment, ask people in the allotment. They love talking about gardening, that's why they're there. Every year you get a certain amount of vegetables that just go crazy. So instead of just composting them, dry them, store them for another year, because the next year you might not be able to grow any. Timing really matters too. Starting off all our seedlings super early is really important. So getting all of these started and ready early and having the grow lights really does put a increase on the things that we can actually grow, which is super important for when you're growing all your own food, because you don't want to wait for ages and like have nothing tasty for a very long time. So we start off all of these things very early and we put them on these lovely warm mats so that they're nice and ready to go for when we need them. They dry out really quick on the mats, and as soon as we see them coming up, we stick them on the grow lights. It's lovely and warm in here. Another big consideration in planning, budgeting. So you can go out to a garden centre and buy an absolute ton of starts. and it will cost you an absolute fortune. Or you can start everything from seed. But if you start things from seed, you need to think about timing. You need to think about how you're going to start them. For example, I've just started my chilies and it's absolutely freezing, so they're in a seed tent. Your space might be limited, but remember, you have to be able to crawl before you can walk, and you need to be able to walk before you can run. So that might not be a bad thing. You don't want to be overwhelmed and give up. And if you don't have very much money, so you can't buy land, and you don't have very much space right now, stick your name down today on an allotment site and you'll have one before you know it. Allotment sites are actually designed to grow a year's worth of food for 4 people. So it's a really great way of starting out if you don't have the money or the facility for land. One key strategy for growing a year's worth of food is effectively using the space that you have, whether it's growing herbs in pots or everything in containers. Growing everything vertically. Spacing really matters. There's no point of cramping everything into a very, very small space because it's not going to grow as big as you want it to. Things like these cabbages, they need their room between them to really get to their full potential. When it comes to plants, it is a combination of different things that you want to be doing to make sure you're getting the best out of your garden. Like growing a ton of perennials, like this perennial kale, or growing the 3 sister beds like we did here last year. That gives you a ton of food in such a small amount of space. You've got corn, you've got winter squash, and you've got climbing beans. Amazing. Growing things in succession is also fundamental because what you're getting is small harvests but often. So things like lettuce, spring onions, radishes, they're really good as succession plants, so you don't want them all in one go because there's only so much lettuce that you can grow and it doesn't really store very well. Soil health is also a great way to improve what you're growing. Now, whether you're going out and getting horse manure, buying shop bought compost, or using the back to Eden method, you must make sure that you are improving your soil every single year. This is the best way to A, put things back into your soil, and B, to improve your overall health of your plants. It's easy to think of soil as something that's just dead, but it isn't. It's a whole entire ecosystem of different critters that are working together with your plants to make them healthy. If you don't feed your soil, you are not feeding your plants. So don't think about it as growing plants, think about it as growing soil, and your plants will do amazing. Making your own compost is probably the most cost-effective way of running your own garden, and it's super easy. It's a lot less confusing than you'd think. Buying just a really cheap composting tin, or you could do it in a heap, or you could just put some pellets together like I have over the allotment. But the main thing is that you have your mix correct, and it's way simpler than it seems, okay? So you want to put a load of green stuff in, all in together, and then a load of brown stuff on top. Green things are like grass clippings, fresh plants, or the tops of carrots, whatever you have, just chuck them all in together. And then you put all your browns on top. So that is your wood chip, cardboard, paper, anything like that. Shredded paper is fantastic. Put it all in on top, and that's all you're going to be doing, layers of that. And if you get a smell, put more browns in. And if it's not breaking down as quick as you'd like, go ahead and stick in some more greens. It really is that simple. People trying to make it more complicated, it really isn't. Depending on how much you turn it, over a year or two, you'll have beautiful free compost. Cardboard is so helpful in the garden, and that's why I always have a ton of it. We save all of our cardboard to go down the allotment, and what I do is every year I lay it flat on the beds and I pile up compost on top. And that's why you always see heaps of cardboard in the corner of my house, because I haven't been down the allotment yet. Let's talk pest control without the toxic rubbish. This is a great way of controlling your own food. Believe it or not, one of the best ways I'm going to tell you to reduce pests is to keep a tidy garden. Removing all the litter from your garden will reduce places that insects can hide, like snails and slugs. This means you have less pest pressure. It's really important to have reduced pests because you'll be able to have less damage to your plants, and spacing is fundamental for this. If you space out your plants, you have less stressed plants. Less stressed plants, less likely to be attacked by pests. Now, there's tons of different ways of growing organically and not using loads of pesticides. When I first started, I used tons of pesticide. I literally thought that was how you grew, but now I'm reaching for different things. For example, beer traps and spacing and removing weeds and things like that. And the amount of slugs and damage I'm getting is reducing every year, but it's just keeping on top of that. However, I have to say, having birds really does help. So if you're looking for an excuse to get chickens, this is it. Remember to subscribe. Now, that all said, you can have the best space in the world, the best plants in the world, etc. But what you need to make sure you're doing is making sure your watering system is really easy to use. So I'm talking hoses, I'm talking water catchment systems. If it's difficult, you're not going to do it. The more you water, the better your crops are going to be most of the time. Okay, so you do want to have an easy way of making sure you water things. My greenhouse is a pain in the bum to water. I know all I have to do is slide the door, but it makes me less likely to water it. Something that I have to work on. Maybe you're way less lazy, I'm hoping so. But if you're not, that's okay too. You can get automatic watering system. I had one here, and you put it onto the hose, you can even put it onto a timer. And to be honest, since I've had that watering system, things have moved on a lot since then, and it's so much better and cheaper. When it comes to growing a year's worth of food, you get that kind of awkwardness. Well, what do you do with all of it? And we do an absolute ton to preserve all of the food that we have. We pressure can and we water bath, which are all different skills that I've learned over the years to make sure that everything is preserved really well and stays fresh for all the time that we need it to. And that's not to mention drying, and of course storing in oil, which is really good. We make a ton of balms and stuff, which we need herbs stored in oil for, because we're actually taking the olive oil out of this. Dried herbs like this marshmallow are absolute key for keeping us healthy all year round and not just well fed. And that's not to mention one of the easiest skills, freezing. So when we're deciding what we're going to grow, we have to think about how well things store. So for example, these cured onions have been in here since, what, summer? We've got a few left, got more indoors. These store super well, so I'm going to make sure that I have more storing onions, and the white ones store better than the red ones. And we're going to make sure that we consider things like this Crown Prince, which stores really, really, really long, just sitting on the side because it has this tough, hard skin. There's lots of things like our garlic that we actually grow to store, so we have to make sure they're really good at storing. Storing food in this way allows us to have it year round, which is really important. Oh, it's really cold. Just remember, I've been doing this over 9 years, and I started small and worked my way up. I started with one single tomato plant, which I killed, well, which Jasmine cuddled to death, and I've worked my way up since then. So if you feel like this is overwhelming, start small and increase every year. You'll find that less overwhelming in terms of canning, instead of learning skills, and in gardening, and finding the time to do all of this. And slowly, you'll notice that you're able to do a lot more.